Bhajahu Re Mana Shri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Charana Ravinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Ashtottara Sata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Ashtottara Sata Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaja Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadvip Dham ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Yamuna Mai ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaura Premanande, Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. All glories to the unassembled devotees. All glories to the unassembled devotees. All glories to the unassembled devotees, scattered here and there. on the internet. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Srishtham Manum Api Shachiputram Atra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupuring Maturim Goshtavartim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Ataf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The central topic of this talk is going to be enhancing our devotional practices. Recently, I advised a disciple to stop wasting his time and his valuable human life scouring the internet for all kinds of things going on in ISKCON or purported to be going on in ISKCON which shouldn't be going on, and wasting my time too by informing me of all these things and wanting to get my feedback on all these things. There are, or maybe, all kinds of things going on which could be disturbing to the mind, but we can't do much about it. And really, Bhaja Hure Mana Sri Nandanandana. That's what we should be doing. We just sung that kirtan. Our mind should be engaged in Krishna. And better to engage the mind in Krishna in anukulyasya, in a way that is conducive for developing our love for Krishna. Not that we shouldn't be uninformed or unaware of various pitfalls that arise in devotional service, even within the devotional community. Not that we should be naively unaware, but really our subject should be Krishna, 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 and Krishna. In this regard, I'm going to read from Rupa Goswami's seminar. It's a one-verse seminar on time management. Tannama rupa charitadi sukirtanano. Tannama rupa charitadi sukirtanano. Smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya. Tishtan vrajetadanu jananugami kalam nayed akhilam ityupadesha saram. This is from Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita. Rupa Goswami gave us so much Upadesh in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, his ocean of the nectar of Bhakti Rasa. He's given so much upadesh, so much instruction. And this is a much shorter work, only 11 verses, Upadeshamrita, the nectar of instruction. Srila Prabhupada translated it with the literal translation, the nectar of instruction. So this is the nectar of instruction, one of the 11 verses, and herein is what Rupa Goswami says is the Upadesha Saram, the essence of all advice. And Srila Prabhupada's translation of this verse begins with those very words. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time management, one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Vraja, Golok Vrindavan Dham. So here we have advice, how we can live in Vrindavan even while living in this world by chanting Sukirtananu Smritya. Chanting and then very, very careful, Sukirtan, very nicely chanting, and then automatically remembrance will arise, Kirtan Prabhave Smarana Hoibe, and then we can live in Vrindavan, wherever we may be happen to be situated. In this way, one should reside in Vraja, Golok, Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Now, those of you who have studied Upadeshamrita, and I advise, it's the nectar of instruction, the nectar of advice, that everyone study this. Those who have studied, they'll know that the purports that Srila Prabhupada gives in these 11 verses are quite considerably longer in general than the average length purport in his other books. So I'm just going to read from the beginning of that purport. Since the mind may be one's enemy or one's friend, one has to train the mind to become his friend. The Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for training the mind to be always engaged in Krishna's business. The mind contains hundreds and thousands of impressions, not only of this life, but also of many, many lives of the past. These impressions sometimes come in contact with one another and produce contradictory pictures. In this way, the mind's function can become dangerous for a conditioned soul. So, Srila Prabhupada is talking here about the nature of the mind. Hundreds and thousands of impressions, not only of this life, actually. Hundreds of thousands, that's an understatement. It's practically unlimited impressions of even in this life and in previous lives. But the process of Krishna consciousness is to replace all those different impressions which drag us to hell. Dhayato vishayan pungsa, sangasteshu pajayate, sangat sanjayate kamaha. By meditating on the objects of the senses, we become attached to those objects of the senses. Our desire arises, and then from desire there's a whole spiral down into hell, into material existence. Just go on and on in material existence. Because we have impressions in our mind, we become attached to things that we've seen in the past, touched, tasted, smelled, or something that we desire, and there's unending desire. Hoya mayardas kari nana abhilash. When we become the servant of Maya, we have so many different desires. So Krishna consciousness, the process means to train our mind so that we are absorbed in thought of Krishna. It might seem to be very difficult, but not really, because Krishna is attractive by nature. Unfortunately, due to contaminated consciousness, we're not very attracted to Krishna. This topic is discussed in another verse of Upadeshamrita. Please read it, in which it's stated that you go on chanting, go on chanting, go on chanting, and gradually a taste for that chanting will arise within us. So these impressions have arise in this life. We have impressions from previous lives. So we have to be very careful what kind of impressions we allow to go into our mind right now. What kind of thoughts do we want to have? We want to have thoughts that will attract us to Krishna. So that means hearing and chanting about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the reservoir of all pleasure, the all-attractive person, our Lord and Master and friend. We want to think of Krishna, and for that there is a process, which is to hear and chant about Krishna. That is the essence of the Krishna conscious process, and that leads to remembrance of Krishna, service of Krishna. Hearing and chanting is the basis. So we have to be very careful not to allow, as far as possible, not to allow into our mind impressions, thoughts, we can just say thoughts, which are going to divert us away, which can even be topics about the Krishna conscious movement which are not very favorable to our advancement. And there may be many things, and I've spoken many times about such topics, but it's not really our subject. It's just like the first thing in the morning. If you see in traditional Indian villages, first thing in the morning, what do you sweep the courtyard, get everything cleaned up before you start the day. So in the same way, we just sweep up, just get our mind free from all this unnecessary garbage. Sweep means dust, and the leaves have fallen down, and in the villages the cows will pass stool here and there, so that you don't sweep it up, you take it and put it on the side of the cottage. Anyway, you clean up very nicely, and then you can go about your day's business very nice, and you feel very fresh and able to do so. So some cleaning up is required, but that's not our whole business. Our business is to cultivate loving feelings for Krishna, and that arises principally by hearing and chanting about Krishna. Krishna nama mahamantra eto shobhav jai jape tar Krishna upajai bhav. It is the very nature of the Hare Krishna mantra that anyone who chants it, their feelings for Krishna will arise. But natural feelings for Krishna will arise, but we have to be careful not to put in other thoughts. And just an example, there are so many. We all wander on the internet here and there looking at different things. Don't get distracted into that. I gave a talk about that quite recently, not earlier this year, just in the late part of last year, about not being sucked into internet distractions. But even if we're doing something legitimate in Krishna service on the internet, something pops up, some picture of a beautiful woman, and that's supposed to attract us. Why do they put it there? Because it's supposed to attract us. And then we look at it, and then they're trying to sell something by showing this picture of a beautiful woman. So there are some impressions which we shouldn't allow it to go in. Don't let it go in. Just stop it before it goes in. Otherwise, you have to deal with it, and it's just an unnecessary disturbance. The materialist might think, well, it's very nice to look at that, but even they get fed up of it. The people who are who are addicted to pornography, they're very fed up with it. They feel very dirty about it. Even the materialists who succumb to, and even some devotees may do, and they may succumb to pornography addiction. And you may, well, what's the harm? You're just looking at some pictures, but it contaminates the mind very badly. So that's one. There are so many things that don't go there. Don't go. If you know it's not going to be conducive to our Krishna consciousness, so just don't go. In this regard, the picture pops up, you don't look, that's all. You just scroll past or whatever. In this regard, I will read from a verse composed by followers of Sri Shankaracharya. Naristana bharanabhidesham drishtva maga mohavesham etan mangsa vasadi vikaram manasi vichintaya varam varam. Woman's breast is very heavy. Once Srila Prabhupada said to his servant at the time, Hari Shari Prabhu, he was standing and Prabhupada indicated, he said, this part of the body is a woman's body is very attractive to men. So the heavy breast, the attractive waist, thin waist, these are all very attractive, but we may see it, we can't avoid in this world. We can try, we can go to some cave somewhere, but in this world we can't avoid seeing that completely, but we shouldn't let our mind go there and be illusioned. Withdraw. Kurmang, what is that? Kurmangaiva. That one should withdraw one's. Yada samharate chayang kurmonangiva sarvashaha. Indriyatebhyas tasya pragya pratishtita. Yeah, one should be a pragya, a wise person, or one who is fixed in proper intelligence. That when the senses come in contact with the sense objects and one feels attraction, just withdraw like a tortoise. Withdraw one's, instead of the attraction going out and then the mind goes out to see that and then that enters within the mind, just withdraw from that. Doesn't mean that you lock yourself away from the world, but withdraw from the concept of trying to enjoy this world. So that's advice for transcendentalists, that this way one can be fixed in proper knowledge. Of course, for a devotee, he thinks, or is supposed to think of everything in terms of Krishna consciousness, think in terms of Krishna. So we shouldn't see the beautiful body of a woman per se, but see here is a poor jiva who is entrapped in such a body. But that may require some level of spiritual advancement. So enhancing our devotional practice, this is the point. Don't allow our minds to be diverted. Rather, engage our minds. The essence of all advice is to engage our minds in hearing and chanting about Krishna as much as we can. We often used to hear, especially here in India, where we used to hear how life in India is very laid back compared to the West. That was in the British Raj days, but now in Indian cities, the people work much longer hours than, on average, people in the West do. And we often used to hear, well, it's such a strain to find enough time for hearing and chanting and all these things. But now the lockdown is going on here and there. Not much in India, but people are working at home. Many people have lost their jobs. And one great advantage of that for so many devotees have found that, now we got a chance oh, at last I got a chance to read Srila Prabhupada's books. What a boon. Materially, it's lose your income and lose your job, but spiritually, this is a very great boon to actually have time to read Srila Prabhupada's books. So many devotees have also joined online reading groups or reading Srila Prabhupada's books together. This is the point. We have to increase the spiritual content of our lives. That's a quote from one of Srila Prabhupada's letters. We have to increase the spiritual content of our lives. Spend time to hear and chant. Read Srila Prabhupada's books. We can chant more rounds or learn shlokas. And not all, we can do both. We can read more, learn shlokas, recite prayers such as the Brahma Sanghita, prayers of Queen Kunti. We can sing, learn different bhajans. For me personally in my life, that's been a great source of spiritual nourishment, is singing the songs of the Vaishnava acharyas. Or we can simply chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra more, sing or chant more. It's not that finish 16 rounds, put the bead back down. Have time, chant more. If you have time, chant. If you have extra time, if we don't have extra time, we can try and make some extra time so that we have time for enhancing our spiritual practices. And even if we don't have time to increase the quantity, we can increase the quality. We can work on that. Now, I have heard it said sometimes, that devotees, they have this, some devotees, they have an idea, well, it's better to chant 1 or 2 rounds or maybe 4 rounds well than to chant 16 rounds not very well. There's some idea among the myriad ideas floating around about how to make spiritual advancement while avoiding all the processes given by the acharyas for making spiritual advancement. One of the ideas is chant less but chant well. But Srila Prabhupada didn't say that. He said first comes quantity, then quality. You make the vow to chant 16 rounds, and you do it. And then you can start working on the quality. Now, I would say if someone says, well, I can chant 1 round nicely, and it's better than chanting 16 rounds just not nicely. But if you can chant 1 round nicely, well, why not more? And if you're actually chanting 1 round nicely, then naturally you'll want to chant more. I got an email, I received it this morning, from one of my older disciples in London, United Kingdom, Braja Kishori Mata, who is updating me time to time on the health condition of her husband, who recently had a stroke. And in this email she informed me that he watches me as I sit and chant my rounds, all in one sitting. So that's a very good practice she has. She likes to sit. Of course, everyone might not be able to do that, but if you can sit and just chant all your rounds. And I've seen her, how she chants. She chants with absorption, really trying to get absorbed in the holy names. So that's a very good practice. That's a very good practice, isn't it? You're going to chant 16 rounds. Yeah, first comes quantity and then quality, but we should be working on the quality also and try to get absorbed and really praying to Krishna, because the holy names reveal Krishna to us. Atah Shri Krishna namadi na bhaved grahyam indriyai sivonmukhe hi jivado swayameva spuratyada. Krishna very kindly reveals himself to devotees who are inclined to serve him, beginning with the tongue by chanting his holy names. And of course the tongue's business is also to talk of Krishna and to taste Krishna prasadam. So Krishna, he's very kindly made himself available to us as the holy names, Nam Namakari Bahudha, Nija Sarva Shaktis, Tatrarpita, Niyamate, Smarane Nakala, Etad Rishi Tava Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi, Durdaiva Midrashami Hajanina Anuraka. Krishna has so many names. He's made himself available to us in so many names. And all the potencies of Krishna's names are all there in all his names. Simply by chanting these names, then we become attracted to Krishna. But we are so unfortunate. We don't have taste for chanting because we commit offenses. But try. Let us go on trying. So that's very nice. She's chanting. Srila Prabhupada chanting with attention, really trying to chant very nicely. And Srila Prabhupada writes in one purport in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, that the spiritual master is not necessarily so much satisfied if a disciple brings a lot of money. I believe this is referring to those kind of money-oriented gurus, which were quite common in India at the time. People, it's a profession being a guru, so they like the disciple who brings them more money. But Srila Prabhupada wrote that the spiritual master is actually pleased when he sees that the disciple is making spiritual advancement. So let us enhance our spiritual practices, chant more, hear more, learn shlokas. Maybe you can learn to play mridanga if you don't know how to do so. You have the capacity to do so. It's not limited to men, by the way. Women can also. The gopis in Vrindavan, some of them, they play mridanga, or cooking for Krishna. Whatever our desire, how we'd like to serve Krishna, we can serve Krishna, but we can learn how to cook so many nice preparations for Krishna, sing for Krishna, sing him a lullaby at night as he's going to rest. The whole point is somehow or other engage our mind in Krishna more and more and more and more. So there's some suggestions to enhance our devotional practices, and be careful not to be sucked into unnecessarily into topics which are going to drag our consciousness down. Hare Krishna, vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I'm going to give another little talk now, Krishna willing, in Bengali, for the few who might be online and who also happen to understand Bengali. So here we go. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavate ek prasiddha shlok ahameva samevagre nanyad yat sadasat param tasmad paschadaham yadetachcha yo vashishyati sosmyaham. Bhagavan Sri Krishna kahilen যে সৃষ্টির আগে, এই বিশাল জগতের সৃষ্টির আগে আমি ছিলাম, আমি উপস্থিত ছিলাম, এবং এই সারা জগতের সংহারের পরে আমি থাকব, এবং অবশ্যই আমি বর্তমান কালে উপস্থিত আছি। সৃষ্টির আগে জড় প্রকৃতি অভিব্যক্ত ছিল না, কিন্তু আমি ছিল। এই হচ্ছে খুব সুন্দর জ্ঞান না? স্কুলে দেখেছি বাংলাদেশে ওই রিক্সার পেছনে, অটোর পেছনে লেখা আছে, আপনার ছেলে মেয়ে স্কুলে পাঠান। সম্মান দেওয়া হয়। কিন্তু স্কুলে কি রকম শিক্ষা দেওয়া হয়? আধুনিক তথাকথিত বৈজ্ঞানিক জ্ঞান, যা প্রকৃতপক্ষে সেটা জ্ঞান নাই, সেটা এক মতবাদ, কাল্পনিক, যে সর্বপ্রথমে কিছুই ছিল না, একদম শূন্য ছিল, এবং কেউ জানে না কিভাবে, কিন্তু কোনো মতে এক বিরাট বিস্ফোরণ ছিল। তারপরে সব কিছু ক্রমে ক্রমে এসে গেল, এবং এখন আমরা এখানে আছি। মানে তারা ভগবানকে মানে না। অসত্যম অপ্রতিষ্ঠম তে জগদাহুরনীশ্বরম অপরস্পর সম্ভূতম কিমন্যৎ কাম হেতুকম। ভগবদ গীতায় ভগবান কৃষ্ণ বলেন যে যারা এইভাবে মনে করে যে কোনো ভগবান নন, জগতে ঈশা কেউ না, কিভাবে এই বিরাট সৃষ্ট হলো? তো এমনি কিছু রসায়ন ছিল, কেমিক্যালস, তার পরস্পর সম্ভূতম, পরস্পর প্রক্রিয়া ছিল, এবং এমনি জগৎ চলছে। বাস চলছে কিন্তু চালক নাই, তাদের মত। সেটা জ্ঞান নেই, সেটা রাক্ষস জ্ঞান। ভগবানের বিরুদ্ধে তারা সেই রকম মত সৃষ্টি করে যাতে লোকেরা মনে করবে, এই হচ্ছে বিজ্ঞান, খুব উত্তম জ্ঞান আছে, কিন্তু সেটা জ্ঞান নেই। আসল জ্ঞান এই শ্রীমদ্ ভাগবতে আছে। অহমেবাসমৈবাগ্রে নান্যদ্যৎ সদসৎপরম পশ্চাদহম যতে তচ্চ সোবশিষ্যতি সোऽস্ম্যহম। ভগবান স্বয়ং বলছেন কিভাবে ইনি সৃষ্টি করেছেন, কিভাবে ইনি উপস্থিত ছিলেন সৃষ্টির আগে, এবং প্রলয়ের পরে তিনি থাকবেন, এবং প্রলয়ের পরে আবার সৃষ্টি হবে। এই সকল জ্ঞান আমরা শ্রীমদ্ ভগবদ গীতা, শ্রীমদ্ ভাগবত থেকে আমরা লাভ করতে পারি। সেই জন্য আমি উপদেশ দিচ্ছি, অনুমোদন, যে আপনারা আসল প্রকৃত জ্ঞান লাভ করার জন্যে আপনারা অবশ্যই শ্রীমদ্ ভাগবত পাঠ করুন। সেটা মহান বৈদিক জ্ঞানের ভাণ্ডার আছে। তার থেকে জড় জগতের সম্বন্ধে এবং অপ্রাকৃত জগতের সম্বন্ধে, এবং উভয় জগতের মালিক শ্রী ভগবান শ্রীকৃষ্ণের সম্বন্ধে সব কিছু বুঝতে পারবেন। সব কিছু মানে সব কিছু তো সম্ভব না, কিন্তু মূলক জ্ঞান, যে কিভাবে সব কিছু চলছে। মায়াধ্যক্ষেণ প্রকৃতি সুয়তে সচরাচরম হেতুনানেন কৌন্তেয় জগৎ বিপারে বর্ততে। কিভাবে জগৎ চলছে? জগৎ, এটা সংস্কৃত শব্দ না, গাচ্ছিতি জগৎ, জগৎ শব্দের অর্থ আছে যা সদৈব চলে যাচ্ছে, সেটা জগৎ। তো কিভাবে যাচ্ছে, কিভাবে জগৎ চলছে? চালক কে? শ্রী ভগবান। সেই ভগবানকে শ্রীকৃষ্ণ। কিভাবে ইনি সৃষ্টি করেন, কিভাবে ইনি পালন করেন সব কিছু, কিভাবে সর্বশেষে প্রলয় হয় তা দ্বারা, এই সকল জ্ঞান আছে শ্রীমদ্ ভাগবতের মধ্যে। খুব সুন্দর জ্ঞান আছে, কত সুন্দর জ্ঞান। আমি সর্বপ্রথমে এই সকল বৈদিক জ্ঞান পাঠ করে থেকে অত আনন্দিত ছিল যে আমি বলতে পারছি না। কারণ স্কুলে গেলাম, বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ে আমি প্রবেশ করিনি। ভাবছিলাম যে স্কুলে সব কিছু যা শিখেছি তার মধ্যে কোনো সার নাই। অনেক কিছু শিখেছি, কিন্তু এর মধ্যে কি আছে? আমি কে, ভগবান কে, জীবনের উদ্দেশ্য কি আছে, কিছুই পাইনি স্কুলে থেকে। এবং গ্রন্থালয় থেকে অনেক বই নিয়েছি, পড়েছি। অনেক লোক অনেক কিছু বলতে চায়, কিন্তু সকলে অজ্ঞানী। আমাকে এবং আপনাকে, আমাকে আসল জ্ঞান দিতে পারছিলেন না, কারণ তো নিজেই অজ্ঞানী ছিল। জড় বিদ্যা যত মায়া বৈভব, তোমার ভজনে বাধা। এইসব জড় বিদ্যা, ভক্তিনাথ ঠাকুর বলছেন যে এই জড় বিদ্যা কৃষ্ণের ভজন পথে এক মহান বিঘ্ন আছে। তো আমি যখন সর্বপ্রথমে শিল প্রভুপাদের গ্রন্থ সমূহ পাঠ করে লাগলাম, তখন সতেজ পাইছি। কত সুন্দর জ্ঞান বুঝতে পেরেছি। আরম্ভ থেকে বুঝতে পেরেছি যে এই হচ্ছে আসল জ্ঞান। অনেক বদ্ধ জীব আছে, তাদের জ্ঞান, আমাদের জ্ঞান যেহেতু আমরা বদ্ধ জীব, আমরা খুবই ক্ষুদ্র, ছোট, আমাদের জ্ঞান খুব সীমিত আছে। কিন্তু জ্ঞান যা ভগবান স্বয়ং দিচ্ছেন, কারণ ভগবান অসীম, ভগবান সব কিছু জানেন। বেদাহম সমতীতানি বর্তমানানি চার্জনা ভবিষ্যানি চ ভূতানি মাং তু বেদ না কশ্চন। গীতায় শ্রীকৃষ্ণ বলছেন যে সব কিছু যা হলো, সব কিছু যা হচ্ছে, সব কিছু যা হবে, সব কিছু আমি জানি, কিন্তু কেউ আমাকে জানে না। কে জানতে পারে? ভক্তাহম অভিজানাতি। ভক্তি দ্বারা আমরা কৃষ্ণকে বুঝতে পারি। তো ভগবান যা বলেন সেটা বেদ বলে। বেদ মানে বিদ্যা। আসল বিদ্যা আছে বৈদিক শাস্ত্রের মধ্যে। এবং বৈদিক শাস্ত্রের সার অংশ সেটা কি আছে? সর্ববেদ ইতিহাসানম সারম সারমে হি উদাহৃতম শ্রীমদ্ ভাগবত। শ্রীমদ্ ভাগবত পাঠ করুন, আপনার জীবন ধন্য হবে। কত সুন্দর জ্ঞান আপনি নিজেই উপলব্ধি করতে পারবেন। চেষ্টা করুন। যদি আমার কথা বিশ্বাস করেন না, তো চেষ্টা করুন, শ্রীমদ্ ভাগবতে পাঠ করুন। এই জ্ঞান অতুল আছে সারা জগতের মধ্যে। সকল জ্ঞান যা আছে সারা জগতের মধ্যে, সেটা কিছুই না শ্রীমদ্ ভাগবতের তুলনায়। হরে কৃষ্ণ 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 হরে হরে, হরে রাম 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 হরে হরে। Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah.